For joining us again this week. We're going to get right into it. Let's take a look. Starting here at ETH, we're getting a little bit of a pullback in the market right now. Start of the week, kind of through the weekend, had a little pump. As we've talked about before, usually when these pumps happen on the weekends, we tend to give them back and kind of start back where we were during the sort of U.S. stock market open during those hours. Doesn't like to let it run without the rest of the market with it. With that said, we are seeing a pullback on the stock market as well. So certainly some correlation there. But looking at ETH, actually first let's just go over here and update our weekly level of interest, which was here previously. Just give us a new level on the weekly. For the weekly open, okay. Maybe just make that blue too so it's easy to see. Basically my idea here is right now the momentum of the weekly candle is with the bears. It's a red candle. In theory, we want this to pull back. We want to find support somewhere, and the momentum should shift back to the bulls if we're able to flip this weekly into green. So we know we marked 1279. That's our level of interest. We flip that, break above that, and bulls can kind of take over again, and we can see if potentially we can go higher. But for now, let's look and see where we're looking for sort of a landing zone here. Structurally, we're not necessarily in a very bearish structure. Macro-wise, we are. Looking at a daily time frame, we've got lower highs and lower lows. But within this sort of smaller time frame, we are chopping around in a bit of a range, which I have marked here. But basically, so even between these two charts, there's sort of two different ideas. One, I'm just mapping out levels of interest, and the other one is just more of a simple range. But we have confluence here with this 1214 area on both charts, 1220 on this one. Confluence between basically your range midpoint and this multi-touch level, which I had mentioned in the Discord. We had tested it a bunch of times. As you can see, 1, 2, 3, came down, range low, almost 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, finally broke out, gave a nice order block here for confluence, and now we're kind of chopping around sideways above that. I do think if we pull back down into this, just get rid of that magnet. If we pull back down into this, that should act as strong support, being such a high touch resistance. The theory with this is the more times something's touched, the stronger it's going to get from the other side. And at the same time, the more times it's touched this way as resistance, the weaker that resistance is going to get, which is ultimately what we saw. We tested it, and eventually broke out to the upside, and now we can expect that strong resistance is going to turn into strong support, having been touched so many times as resistance. But yeah, so that's basically what I'm looking at here with ETH. I'm kind of neutral right now, obviously a little bit bearish, short term here, but I do see a case for this coming down, testing that, and potentially going higher. I think ultimately we do come up to the range high, which would give us about 1350. And we've gotten some longs in, much lower, around 1070. So we got some breathing room there. And yeah, I don't see any issue with taking some profits up here, but I do think there's a good chance, a fair chance that we come up to 1350, and that is ultimately where I'd look to sort of de-risk and reassess, see what happens next before making any real decisions portfolio-wise. Shifting over to Bitcoin, similar structure here. It's not all charted out, but we got a range. Range, we had a fake breakout or a breakout that failed. Came down, we're back to this sort of local range low. So a good chance this could actually bounce here. U.S. markets close in about an hour and a half, and we tend to see lately crypto sort of start to bounce as the market closes, and it can kind of play on its own without some of the algos and whatever else going on during the U.S. market hours. Bitcoin could certainly bounce here, which if it does, that would actually probably cancel out my idea of this coming down to 1220. But at the same time, we do have this inefficiency, so I think eventually that does get filled. It filled some of it, but we still have a little bit here. Inefficiency meaning just these big candles where there's not really any trading, it just kind of teleports. When that happens, typically any gaps that are created will get filled eventually. It doesn't have to be now, it could be months from now, but good things to map out on your charts to kind of keep an eye on and look out for. So let's take a look at ETH BTC. Judging by the two charts, I would say Bitcoin is probably leading a bit here. Yeah, we got a pullback on ETH BTC locally. God, this is scribbled all over, huh? But we're within this range that we've been watching for quite a long time now. Kind of towards the upper half, towards the upper end, I guess, above the halfway point. I don't have too much to say about this. This got a little bit of a bullish structure here. I tend to favor ETH and altcoins. That's just the nature of how I like to trade. But yeah, this looks healthy to me. I don't have a problem with this. I'm not like looking at this thinking Bitcoin's gonna take off on ETH in the short term anyways. So yeah, I guess that's it for that. GMX, I know we've mentioned this quite a few times, but really outperforming the general market. And I think it goes into what I was talking about a few weeks ago on this video. Just the lack of trust in centralized exchanges, it's really showing itself. GMX has continued to have pretty strong volume, which means strong fees, which means a strong demand for the token, as that's going to capture those revenues. So interesting there. Glad to see. I know some guys are still holding this. We're near sort of all-time high territory. Not a bad time to give yourself a paycheck on that for sure. Other than that, I think that's going to do it for the sort of the overlook. So we'll stop this here. If you don't mind liking the video, I know we get not too many views. I don't think YouTube likes to promote our videos or anything crypto related. So if you're willing, throw a like on there. We'd appreciate it. Have a good week. We'll see you next week. Bye.